Hello again. I have an idea that many viewers, particularly those in my age group perhaps, are likely to be a little bemused at the apparent increase in the numbers of people seeking what were once known as a sex change. At one time, such things were as rare as could be, and they were limited to the occasional case mentioned in the more sensational newspapers and magazines. These days, of course, it's impossible to open the newspaper without reading about the subject. As I've said before, I have no more objection to people who were born biologically male or female and then choose to adopt the outward appearance and lifestyle of women or men than I have for those who choose to wear collars and ties, grow their hair in dreadlocks, take recreational drugs, or anything else. It's none of my business. However, I find it slightly irritating when societal norms develop so that I must give one minority group more sensitivity and respect than any other. I consider it a personal matter. It's up to me how much consideration and respect I give to any minority. It's not the proper business of the law to dictate that. The whole trans business has, by the way, become an assault on the idea of free will and choice. And that I can and do object to. It has also, by the way, turned into an enormous money-making racket for surgeons and psychiatrists. But that's another matter. I mean, it's a free market. If people want to pay what they're being asked for, charges made by these medical professionals, that's up to them. It's none of my business. For readers unfamiliar with the phenomenon, transsexuals are people who feel that in some sense they really are members of the opposite sex. It's not a case, by the way, of thinking of a man who wishes to be a woman or a woman who wishes to be a man. They feel that they are already men or women. And the problem then changes from a mental one to something purely physical. That is to say, how their bodies can be altered so that they are more accurately aligned with the person who inhabits them. Again, fine by me. If people want to spend a fortune on electrolysis, surgery and hormones with all the attendant health risks, I don't mind. Why should I? However, we do need to remember this is something which people can choose to do or not. Some people who feel this way take these steps. Many others do not. That's where the idea of free will and choice comes in. People decide if they will take these measures or not. I know personally people who have done, and I know others who have chosen not to. The difficulty here, or one difficulty, is the idea that this is a medical condition which requires treatment. Describing the things which people do or fail to do or choose not to do as medical conditions instead of designating them ordinary human behaviour brings with it a host of problems. To give a personal example, I was until 40 years ago an exceedingly heavy drinker. I come from a family of alcoholics, and if there were such a thing as a gene for alcoholism, I don't doubt for a moment I'd have it. It was a nuisance to me, and indeed to those around me, such catastrophically heavy drinking. And for this reason, I chose to stop drinking alcohol. I haven't touched a drop for almost 40 years. Of course, if I wanted to, I could start drinking again. If I went to the shops tonight and bought a bottle of whiskey and drank the lot, it would be a very foolish and ill-considered action, but it would be my choice. It would be a demonstration of free will on my part. An awful lot of people, though, treat alcohol misuse as an illness, as a medical condition, and they claim that those who visit the shops in this way to buy whiskey have a medical problem which forces them to pop to the supermarket to obtain liquor. That strikes me as absurd. It's up to us if we drink or choose not to. It's nothing really to do with doctors. No illness could compel me to put my coat on right now and go off and visit the supermarket. The idea is quite mad. Much the same arguments are advanced when it comes to transsexuality, that it is a medical condition which may only be alleviated by the treatment of surgeons and endocrinologists and so on. This strikes me as a similarly poor way of looking at things. It's especially so since the evidence is weak, or I should more accurately say non-existent, that the medical treatment of transsexuals has any long-term benefits at all for the patient. There are no good data which indicate that post-operative transsexuals are any happier after 10 years than they were before they transitioned. In Sweden, which has been a pioneer for many, many years of the idea of medicalizing this condition, it's been found that the suicide rate for post-operative patients after 10 years are a staggering 20 times those of the general population, which should cause alarm bells to ring, but hasn't yet. This then is where transphobia comes into the picture. Attempts to debate this subject will soon get one disliked, or indeed even hated. Transphobia no longer means just showing hatred or violence towards trans people. It is interpreted now to mean just asking too many questions or expressing skepticism about some of the controversial theories behind the phenomenon. I hardly need to say that the idea of anybody attacking or abusing somebody because they feel, dress or behave like a person of another gender is quite abhorrent to me, and I fully agree with the police for coming down hard on such crimes. Talking about transsexualism though, and expressing one's own opinion about what might be involved in it is another matter entirely. It surely cannot be a hate crime to ask why the proportion of women diagnosed with this condition has rocketed in recent years, or to wonder about the extent to which the internet might be implicated in the soaring numbers overall of people with gender dysphoria, that is to say, where they feel that there is a dissonance between their physical gender and their mental one. My problem with the idea of transphobia, though, runs even deeper than this. The flip side of hate crimes, in which some assaults or murders are treated more severely than others, is that the reverse must inevitably be true, although we seldom think about it. That is to say that some assaults and murders will then be treated more leniently than others. Nobody really seems eager to consider the implications of this. Perhaps we might think about it for a moment. Let us return to the subject of alcoholism, which, like transsexualism, is often regarded as a medical condition. That is to say, something which people cannot help, part of their very being, if you like. Now, the drunk has for thousands of years been a figure of fun. In cartoons and films, habitual drunks are often seen as either funny or suffering from a moral weakness. In the modern world, drunks are more likely to be assaulted in the street, beaten up, robbed, or killed. There are vastly increased risk of suicide and early death. Does this mean that it should be against the law to make jokes about people who frequently get drunk? After all, if it's not their fault, it must be cruel to do so. Should we treat physical assaults on habitual drunks more seriously than attacks on sober people? For most of us, this would be a quite ridiculous idea. Everything we do, how much we drink, what clothes we wear, how we behave in public, what we say, all these things will have an effect on how other people will regard us and how we are likely to be treated. I think it's very dangerous to do as the law currently does and tell me that if somebody attacks me in the street, then that crime will be treated less seriously than it would have been had I been a transsexual. This is actually the current situation. People assaulting me or even killing me will be treated more leniently than they would if I had previously declared myself to be transitioning to another gender. The physical attack on me would then be classed by the police as a hate crime. Does anybody really believe that I deserve less protection under the law than somebody who has visited their doctor for treatment for transsexualism? Have the implications of such policies fully sunk in yet?